A while back someone asked me to make a video showing some detail on the rigging of Moonlight. In this video I've gone into a fair bit of detail about the origins of the Gunter Rig, how I go about lashing the sails onto the spars, raising the rig and making reefing quick and easy. I hope you're enjoying these videos. When you get to the end, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, which helps me to inspire more people to enjoy and sail classic wooden boats. These spars are not the original ones that I built with the boat. So the boat was built 40 years ago. The spars come off the original boat that I actually copied to build Moonlight. So these spars were made by John Philp, who was my mentor at the time. John built a number of really beautiful clinker boats in Tasmania out of Hume pine and King Billy pine. The main difference between a gaff and a gunter rig is that the sail has 3 sides instead of 4. The gaff rig was originally developed in Holland. The upper yard or gaff lays away from the mast, making the 4th side to the sail. This gives the sail a low aspect ratio, meaning that the centre of effort is low compared to a mast-head rig. I've got hold of some really nice rope with a traditional feel to it. It's manufactured by Langman ropes in Holland, and apparently they trace their origins back to about 1638. It's got all the characteristics of synthetic rope in terms of strength and wear, but as well as that, it has that look and feel of a traditional rope. So it's very soft, and you can do anything you want with it. I had a problem when I first started using it, because every time I went to splice it, it just fell apart in my hands. It didn't seem like there was enough tension in the rope. But I learnt that it wasn't really the rope at fault, it was my fault, because I was cutting it without putting tape around the end. So what I do now is I tape it, then I melt the end, and then remove the tape, and then I'll put some whipping on there. So it's a perfect match for Moonlight. When I was a young boy, I learnt to use common whipping to attach the ferrules and guides to my fishing rods. I've found that the common whipping technique is a simple way and a quick way of whipping the ends of these lines. There are plenty of fancier methods, and if you want it to look really pretty, you can look some of them up on the net, but this one works really well, especially when you've got quite a lot of whipping to do. Just a quick touch with the blowtorch melts the end of the whipping line and prevents it from pulling through. So I'm working at the tack end of the sail first. So again, just starting with the bowline. The Sliding Gunter Rig was used on many whaleboats. The top yard slides down the mast when the sail is reefed. This again reduces the aspect ratio, and it also reduces the weight suspended from the top of the mast. Stepping and unstepping a shorter mast is easier. You have the same size and shape of sail found on a Bermuda rig with its bendy mast using the Gunter setup. Wind tunnel tests by Jeremy Howard Williams found that the Gunter rig was just as fast as a Bermuda rig on the wind and faster off the wind. In my experience, when faced with a stiff breeze, say 20 to 30 knots, the top yard of the Gunter lays off the wind, spilling excess load, and this is even more exaggerated when the Gunter yard is dropped without changing the point at which it's hitched to the halyard. In fact, this is the way I always reef the sail, and only now, as I've made this video, have I set it up properly to lower the point of attachment. to allow the hitch to come right up into the sheave block at the top of the mast. I'm looking forward to trying that out next time I'm out in a bit of a blow. When lacing the sail to the yards, a Marlin hitch is often used. The lacing holds the sail to the yards, but it should not be so firm as to prevent the foot of the sail from moving. It is the tension created in the line along the foot of the sail between the outhauls on the tack and the clew that does most of the hard work. There are several variations of the Marlin hitch, from simple through to complex. I've used a heavier form of lacing on the boom than I have on the gunter yard, and then lighter again between the yoke on the gunter yard and the boom. So now we're working at the clew, which is the outer end of the boom, and we've got a hole here through the end of the boom. We've got a couple of holes there actually, one that works as an outhaul and the other that lashes it on here. Place the outhaul through here, and by doing that, actually stretching this line runs along the foot of the sail. Starting off using a Marlin hitch. The Gunter Rig is a very flexible design, giving the owner the ability to vary the setup according to sailing conditions and preferences. It's estimated that there are as many as 60,000 mirror dinghies all over the world using the Gunter Rig. The idea is that the lacing itself shouldn't be too tight. It should give the foot of the sail a little bit of room to move. This actual tension should be taken along here on the rope that forms the bottom of the sail. We'll just go through there twice. So for reefing purposes, I've attached these lines with a stopper knot on one side and a loop created with a bowline on the other side, so that reefing can be done quite quickly. If you saw the video of Fraser Island, you'll see I had to reef in a bit of a hurry and I really wasn't that organised. So what I've done now, so I've created this reef in the clew end. I use a simple slip knot for all of the reefing lines. This means that when it comes time to shake out the reef, the knots can be quickly and easily untied and we can get back to full sail without any fuss. We've got our reefing lines right through underneath there. And I find the loop that I've created there. Again, and I'll just put a little slip knot through there. So I'm going to do the same thing here with the top yard. This is a Gunter Rig, and some people mistake it as a Gaff. The difference between a Gunter and a Gaff is that a Gunter has three-sided sails, whereas the Gaff has four-sided sails, so that the top yard, instead of projecting out at an angle from the top of the mast, it actually operates like an extension of the mast. So same thing here, just starting with a bowline into the head of the sail. So this time I'm going to lace it a little differently than the first time, just because the other method that I used on the boom, where it requires more strength, uses a lot more line. So this is just a slightly simplified version of it. So this time I'm going to lace it a little differently than the first time, just because the other method that I used on the boom, where it requires more strength, uses a lot more line. So this is just a slightly simplified version of the Marlin Stitch. Again, because that's the head, I'll put a second hitch around that. Work the way down in the same way. Two different choices here. You can just rotate around the spar in a spiral, or like so. Just have a hitch there, just sort of holds it in place a bit better. This is where the Gunter rig really comes into its own. The shorter mast makes it so easy to step and unstep the mast, even if you're on your own. You might have heard the song by Men at Work, famously played at the historic America's Cup race, where the prize was finally taken back to Australia by Alan Bond's team. With skipper John Bertrand at the helm, on the downward run of the second last leg, Australia too took the lead to sail into history after 132 years by a margin of 41 seconds. There is a line in there, "I come from the land down under." Well, I come from the land down under, called Tasmania, and that is where I built Moonlight 40 years ago in September this year. There are a number of quite unique and beautiful boat building timbers that grow only in Tasmania. Moonlight is built from a very precious timber, Huon pine, which is now in very short supply. The Huon pine is Australia's oldest living tree. It is one of the oldest living plants on Earth. There are specimens that have reached an age of 3,000 years. Fossil records from a tree found in southwest of Tasmania were dated at 3,462 years. Only the bristlecone pine of North America exceeds it in age. The Huon pine grows at an incredibly slow rate of just 0.3 to 2 millimetres per year in diameter. Despite such gradual growth, the tree may reach heights of 40 metres and often reaches 25 metres or so in height. The spars on Moonlight are made from another unique Tasmanian timber called King Billy pine. King Billy pine, unlike Huon pine, tended to grow on the slopes of hillsides, whereas the Huon pine tends to grow in the wetter valleys. As a result, King Billy pine has been very susceptible to fires and is virtually unprocurable these days. Interestingly, the majority of King Billy pine that was harvested was from fire-killed trees. The ribs and the thwarts in Moonlight are made from celery top pine, another endemic Tasmanian softwood species. Celery top pine lacks the aromatic extractives that you find in Huon pine and King Billy pine, and as such it's not quite as durable, but it's a good strong timber, relatively light and in density probably greater than that of the Huon pine and the King Billy pine, which is extremely lightweight. When we were steaming the bottom 3 strakes or planks into place, we broke 1 or 2, and it was mainly because the Huon pine that we were using was probably seasoned for a little bit longer than I should have done. It would have been better to leave it a little bit greener so that it would steam more easily. So we did lose 1 or 2. Most of that timber was then recovered to use for the floorboards. When it came to putting the ribs in place, we had some timber that was a bit short-grained, and there was a lot of cursing and swearing that was done as they would snap, and so I changed from using Huon pine to celery top pine, which bent really well. We had the steam box out on a very hot day, and there was a risk of fire because there was long grass in the paddock just across the road in front of our place. So we ended up taking the steam box inside and placing it in the fireplace. And Pam Philp, my mentor John's wife, said to me that she'd endured a lot of things over the years, but she'd never had a steam box in her lounge room. Such is the character and quality of my amazing wife. You can see the marks here on the spar. That's where I normally tie the halyard on, but because I've got the sail reefed, I've got to join about here somewhere. I was in my early 20s when I built Moonlight, and reflecting on some of the different things that I did at the time, I'd probably do things a little bit differently these days, but generally there are probably some things that I did in my 20s that I think I'd struggle to repeat today. But one of the things that I think I could have improved on is that I didn't use grown knees for underneath the thwarts and for the breast hook and so on, so I used quite a bit of plywood in those places. From time to time over the years I've thought about replacing the breast hook and the stern knees with some grown knees, and I think I would use Tasmanian blackwood, maybe even some figured blackwood for those to replace that plywood. So it's just one of those things on my to-do list. You probably noticed that the boom went up and out of sight. That's because I had a reef in the sail, which I've now shaken out, undone the slip knots and lowered the boom to where it normally rests. Once the head of the sail reaches the sheave block at the top of the mast, you can then pull on the downhaul to tension the line that runs down the luff of the sail. There's a little bit of lacing to be done between the bottom yoke on the gunter yard and the boom. Apart from that, she's ready to go.